Like and follow if you love horror. We should try to find its sketchpad, Wolf said, staring at a painting hung high over the staircase. No matter what its habit is now, it started somewhere with something. I would be willing to bet my career that we'll find its manner of practice here. Diana nodded at Wolf, and then the team found out. Joe Jack was about to try and corner Giuliani when he darted around him and joined Diana. Wolf grabbed his old friend's shoulder and led him towards the basement, leaving Ronnie to explore the upstairs by himself. He was halfway up the stairs when his phone vibrated to get his attention, and he thumbed on the Bluetooth. "This is Ronnie." "What's the situation?" Miranda's gruff yet feminine voice came over the line, making Ronnie pause for a moment. She was, in many ways, the sort of woman he'd always been attracted to. No nonsense, fit, and as scarred as he was, probably just as much on the inside as the out. The only time anything had happened between them had been many years ago, when they were celebrating their first victory. Enough drinking had drowned out Mother's nagging that something was off about Miranda. But even though it had been many years since that night, he remembered it fondly. She was his boss, and more importantly, she was uninterested in a relationship. "Wish you could see the circus for yourself, Murdoch. Giuliani is sick of Joe Jack and gaga over Diana, and between you and me, Diana ain't as much of an emotionalist robot as I thought. She practically drooling over Wolf, who, far as I can tell, hasn't even realized she's a woman, let alone an interested one." "I'm sorry, Ronnie. Did you think I was calling to catch up on gossip?" Miranda's question made Ronnie laugh, feeling only a little chastised. "Sorry, it's just pretty funny situation. Anyways, the house is old and beat up. My guess is this place has been around since colonial times, judging from the decor and the architecture. If this was a less refined slasher, I would probably assume it was some kind of slavery revenge ghost or something. But I think it's probably the opposite. Some well-to-do killer that sees everyone and everything as its property. Worst of the Old South. Do me a favor and find any old weapons and bring them back to me," Miranda said. Ronnie chuckled. It wasn't a new request. Miranda collected antique swords and guns. His guess was that most of these things in her collection were things she had used. She never admitted knowledge of her true nature, and she seemed happy to keep that under a thin charade. "Unfortunately, probably not, boss. For the most part, this place has been picked over of anything of value." Ronnie was so focused on talking he didn't notice the thin line of metal stretched across the banister. "I'll keep my eyes up." His foot caught the line and tugged it free. There was a soft twang, and a sudden force slammed him into the railing of the landing. Ronnie calmly looked down at the crossbow bolt protruding from his arm. A nagging sensation in his head blocked the pain for a moment and informed him that he'd have noticed if he wasn't busy talking on the phone. "Damn, Miranda, I've got to go. I've just been shot." He was about to elaborate when he saw a strange figure at the end of the landing dart into another room. "Contact!" Ronnie shouted, praying the rest of the team was all right and able to hear him. Ronnie looked down at the crossbow bolt. It hurt like hell, but it wouldn't stop him from doing his job. He muttered under his breath, asking Father for help, and raised his hands to direct the energy he was being gifted. Around him, warm air flowed across the landing slowly at first, and then localized gusts that pushed and triggered more traps. The wind was a living thing for that moment, seeking out tripwires and pressure plates. Multiple spikes, lances, arrows, and assorted pointy objects jutted out from different hidden devices. Ronnie tried not to let the pain get to him. Anger could color any magic he was using and make it dangerous. And magic was dangerous to anyone else, would be dangerous to him as well. He let his hand drop, thanking the wind for its service, and drew his pistol from its holster. "This is the FBI. Come out with your limbs up." Ronnie felt stupid. This felt stupid. Diana had been insisting that they follow more appropriate law enforcement procedures, and for some reason Miranda was backing her up. But what rights did a supernatural being have, other than Jura, and Father, and Mother? He grunted to himself. Maybe Diana had a point. But in the case of slashers, if this thing was some sort of posing dummy, how could it have rights? When the thing didn't show itself, he began to edge forward. Ronnie hadn't survived this long by being reckless. The thought that maybe there was more than one killer entered his mind. After all, Diana said there were several posing dummies being shown at the gallery. He checked each room as he moved past it towards the one he'd seen the thing disappear into. He could hear the rest of the team coming up as he approached the room. Wolf and Joe Jack popped up at the other end of the hall. Diana and Agent Julie appeared down the hall behind him. Ronnie gestured to Joe Jack and then to the room. They moved in practiced fashion. "All right," Ronnie called out in disbelief that he was actually trying to arrest a UP. Even more interesting, he was cautious to see how the rookie would take it if he actually saw the damn thing. "No need to make this difficult. Surrender yourself by throwing down your firearm and coming out where we can see you." All three practitioners hoped it wouldn't comply for the sake of Agent Giuliani. The request was met by a bolt embedding itself into the door frame a few inches from Ronnie's head. "Joe Jack," he said, nodding at his colleague's peacekeeper. "With pleasure." Joe Jack nodded back, cocking the hammer, and spun low on one knee around the frame, but that was all. "Huh," he said, sweeping the fancy antique revolver about the room. He even checked the ceiling, having encountered more than one flying or climbing UP in his days. "Ain't nothing there." Ronnie bobbed his head into the room, then motioned for the other agents and Wolf to follow. They entered cautiously and fanned out. "Check those corners. Watch for traps," he commanded as they spread out about the room. "Clear," Diana said. "Clear," Agent Giuliani said. "Spick and span," Joe Jack retorted, looking about. Wolf shrugged in response. "You sure you saw them?" "Yeah, came by here," Ronnie replied. "Maybe it's invisible," Joe Jack offered. This prompted the rookie to start laughing. "What's funny?" Joe Jack asked. "Straighten up, wise ass," Ronnie barked. "We got a hostile somewhere on premises. We can't let it off sight. Joe Jack, take Agent Saperstein and Giuliani back outside and circle the manor. Eyes on the exits. Wolf and I will flush it out." "You want a civilian advisor as backup?" Agent Giuliani spat. "That's an order, Rook. Now move." Ronnie was senior on the scene, which meant command defaulted to him. The three agents fell out, and Ronnie moved to Wolf's side, pulling up his Inquisitor app. Ruins fell about the room in blue light, but nothing turned up. "Interesting magic. You'll have to show me how that thing works at some point." Wolf pulled out the last thing Ronnie expected a Jewish exorcist to wield, a set of brass knuckles. When Wolf saw Ronnie raise an eyebrow, he chuckled. "Would it help if I told you they had words of power carved into them?" On to more pressing matters. Wolf was just about to move on to the next room when Ronnie stopped him. The agent held up his hand for a second and seemed to be listening. His head cocked awkwardly to the side as he turned about the room. He leaned down, swept up some dust with his hand, and blew over top of it. A whirling zephyr took up the particles, spinning them slightly. It danced from his hand and glided across the floor to the wall, sliding under the frame of the floor skirting. Wolf and Ronnie locked gazes and moved to the wall. Ronnie pushed on it lightly, and it slid aside. The seam was so flush it was imperceptible to the naked eye. Behind the wall was a narrow space barely large enough for Ronnie and Wolf to fit in sideways. A series of blocks had been fixed into the wall as a makeshift staircase. Ronnie tapped his cheek and made sure to make eye contact with Wolf again. His deep brown eyes turned gold and seemed to shimmer slightly. He took a point and carefully ascended the steps. The steps led to a partially unfinished attic, lit only by a small port window. Dozens of framed paintings were stacked about. A wooden figure just stood inside the light of the small window. It was almost featureless, making it difficult for Ronnie to tell which direction it was facing. It was well articulated at the joints by brass fittings. Even the fingers were articulated at the joint. Something odd glistened in the light of the window. Fragmented bands of amber streaked about the figure's